Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Richard Ohlberger for yet another exciting edition of the Richard Listens podcast. Today, we will be joined by a pioneer in the field of weightlifting and fitness nutrition. As I'm tongue-tied on this Monday, you can tell how much I'm juggling. So thanks for bearing with me. Dr. John Jaquish is our guest today. And he is founder of the X3 bar, which I've been trying myself this last month and been having a great time getting efficient results in short periods of time. He is also the author of Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. And so he will boggle your brain in terms of what works, what he's found, and why he was moved to come up and create this product that brings elasticity and bands into your home for the best optimal results. Dr. John Jaquish is the inventor of an effective bone density building medical device, which has reversed osteoporosis, I'm tongue-tied, for thousands, and he's created more powerful fracture-resistant athletes. He's partnered with Tony Robbins for OsteoStrong for rapid clinic deployment. In the process of his medical research, he's also quantified the variance between power capacities from weak to strong ranges in weightlifting, which brought him to his second invention, X3. So first he had OsteoStrong and then X3. The research that he is presenting claims to indicate that his product builds muscle much faster than conventional lifting and does so in less training time and with lower risk of injury. Dr. Jaquish is a research professor at Rushmore University. He speaks at scientific conferences all over the world, and he's been featured on many of the top health podcasts. He's an editor of multiple medical journals, and he's a nominee of the National Medal of Science. I promise to get my speech clear. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting us and being with us today. I'm excited to bring to you Dr. John Jaquish. Thank you. It's a pet peeve of mine when people mispronounce my name. So, John Jaquish, ladies and gentlemen, Jaquish, and found on social media, Dr. Drjaquish. He's going to tell us today a little bit about how he's come to write his book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, and the X3 system, which I've been trying out the last 2 weeks. I won't show off my biceps, but I'm feeling pretty good. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So we caught you. This is the headquarters right there?
Yeah, that's our logo.
Where are you guys based out
of? California.
Right on. Yeah. So, certainly, product was introduced, we get to a certain age, we want to avoid getting injured. We want to learn how to be healthier as well as stronger. What prompted you to come to this place of creating a revolution and writing this book, right? Not pulling any punches.
Sure. What prompted me? Mostly that most people just didn't know what to do with it. So when I developed OsteoStrong, so this was a little over 10 years ago, I developed a medical device that reverses osteoporosis faster than any drug that's ever been trialed, and there's no side effects. And osteoporosis, for those who don't know, is a bone dysfunction that causes brittle bones, and it actually ends as many lives as breast cancer does. So it's a big deal. And I really addressed it to a profound degree with the device, but what the device did was load the musculoskeletal system. So like this is my humerus bone, putting axial load this way, so end to end load on the bone was the way to stimulate the bone to pull in minerals and add in density. But it needed to be at the appropriate levels of force. And when I realized what the appropriate levels of force were, it was like way beyond what humans ever absorbed during exercise. Like, so for almost all the population, weight training will do nothing for your bone.
Now, did you come to this through your own lifting? Did you come for your own scientific training? Like, where was the kind of flash bulbs or the questions were coming off to not
It was all
accept what you
it's
were being
already
taught?
published in clinical literature. These were discoveries that were made years ago. And yeah, as I was putting stuff together to have a better understanding, I did this whole thing to treat my mother's osteoporosis. So I was really doing it for her, but at the same time, like, wow, you know, this works. This could be like a world-changing technology, and it ended up being that. And so when I was going through this process with OsteoStrong, I should say with the OsteoStrong devices, because OsteoStrong is a franchise model, franchise clinics, and like I'm the science, so I licensed my patents to OsteoStrong, and that company's has a management team, and yeah, I'm a scientist. I don't want to run a franchise, so it'd be a waste of what I can do. So developed it, licensed it, and then I'm still the head of the scientific board. And I answer the scientific questions when physicians have questions, especially specific ones having to do with a very specific patient population. I can give them the information they need through the experiments we ran with the device. But I really don't talk about much that's not in published clinical literature. And I'm kind of a pain in the ass like that. Like, if it's not proven, I'm not going to talk about it. I really don't even like to say, like, well, in theory, maybe this is happening or maybe that's happening, because I don't want people to fall in love with maybes. Maybes are stupid. Maybes are where we got, you know, lies like cardio is good for weight loss. No, it's not. Or you need carbs. No, you don't ever need carbs, ever. And coincidentally, carbs are not a macronutrient. I get so much hatred for that statement.
Yeah, I
But
was going to say.
it's just from idiots who like Twinkies and think they're, like, you know, getting bigger. You know, I'm bulking up with my Twinkie. You know, yeah, you're bulking up your gut. You know, so like it just like, I went through the whole exercise with nutrition. I'll get to that. So what ended up happening was my observations I made developing the medical device. I realized that when we emulated high impact forces, we got to a level of force in the body that is never seen with weight training. Like, I had deconditioned elderly women putting 600, 700, 800 pounds to their hip joint. Like, not effortlessly, it was hard, but there wasn't any real risk. Nobody felt any pain. They actually said it was comfortable and invigorating. Just exposing the musculoskeletal system in that one place where you would absorb high impact forces. Same is true in the upper extremities, same is true in the spine and in the core. So after making these observations, I thought, wow, like, we're capable of so much, yet we use so little, because when we lift, we choose what weight we're able to use in the weaker range of motion. So
We kind of get comfortable there or
yeah,
plateau.
it would be like designing an automobile and saying, okay, we need to be able to go 5 miles an hour so we don't stall. So we'll make that the maximum speed also. So cars only go 5 miles an hour. Like, see how stupid that is? Well, if you know you can handle 7 times the amount of weight when you're almost at full extension than you can at the bottom, well, then you're just wasting your time. And you're not stimulating anything and probably injuring joints. A lot of the injuries are chronic, from chronic overloading of joints, and then we underload the muscle with weight training. So I was just like, wow, I came to the conclusion when we were wrapping up one of the studies that was done, and it was done at a hospital in London. And so I was sitting with all the physicians who ran the study and the principal investigator, and they were talking about, it's just unbelievable how much force the human body is capable of. And they asked me, like, what's the comparison to the force that we're using here to the force that is used in typical gym? And I had been asking myself that question. And so I was like, well, it's like 7 times greater. I said, it kind of explains why so many people work out and don't really get anything out of it. Like, you see millions of people who go to the gym. You can walk into a gym and you see a bunch of people there, and then you go next door to the pizza parlor and people don't really look a lot different. Like I put right on the back of the book, like, who's really fit? Is it 1/100th of 1% of people that exercise are actually like impressive? So why are we defending this industry? This industry is probably the most failed human endeavor. Like, people are fatter and sicker than ever with the nutrition and ineffective exercise. So why do we have to be closed-minded about this? Why is weightlifting the way? It's not. And so after coming to this conclusion, I first thought I'll write a book and not develop a product necessarily about changing the resistance as you move. And then I realized so much resistance was required that if I were to recommend people like just do push-ups with like a band around your back, by the time you get heavy enough to actually do anything to the body, you'll break your wrists. Or you could. I mean, you'd probably be smart enough to realize the neural inhibitory process, and you sense pain and go, oh, okay, I'm not going to do this. Because your wrists are twisting outwardly, which is not a way they're meant to go. And same with the ankles. You put lateral force into an ankle. Ask anybody who's played in the NFL, does the ankle joint like lateral force? No, it does not. So I knew I needed to develop something. So I was like, I'm not going to write a book. I guess I'll develop a product. And that's where X3 really came from. And then there was such a demand for scientific information, mostly because I did not target a fitness population. Because as I was told, first I went and tried to license the X3 concept to different fitness manufacturers. And they all said the same thing, like, a scientific message to the fitness community? Do you have any idea how stupid these people are? Like, if you even
It's
just
not
put,
required.
2 last names, comma, a year, like, that will confuse them. Like, just, APA reference in text, they won't get it. It'll be like, this is a lie. I don't know what any of this means. Yeah, and boy, were they right. Like, the first few test market things I did were aimed more at the fitness industry, and the lack of ability to understand really anything was mind-blowing.
Where do you think that comes from? Is it just that people believe what they've always been taught, or they find one thing that's worked for them and they want to make it, for everybody?
I think people are just profoundly not innovative, not creative, not there's also there's a couple things going on. It's very comforting to think you have all the answers. Like, look at people talking about politics online, right? Like,
I try not to these days.
Oh, right. But I mean, on both sides. I'm not
Right.
saying like I see.
You feel better when you think you know.
Right. And also you get a lot of attention when you pretend like you're an expert, and no one really calls you out on the internet. If you say something stupid, you can just delete your comment later, and it's like it never happened. So people can go around and be the biggest assholes, and there's like no consequence. So it's almost like just looking at children and how they behave. It's like, I'm right, and I'm going to punch everybody who says I'm wrong.
That's right. Well, we all have a little bit of that in us at times, right? We don't want to be challenged. We don't want to think deeper. We don't want to really get the science or proof that would make us really work or question.
And the shame of it is, being challenged is the only way to get better. It's the only way to make sure you have a complete understanding. When somebody comes up to me and goes, what about this? And they bring up like a reference I'm not familiar with, I go and read the paper. And then I will explain, usually, why they misread the paper or how they misread the paper, or maybe it's an interesting point. Maybe other people would have this question. I'm going to do a video on this and address the possibilities that this could mean. Not everybody who sends me a question is, completely wrong. Only most people. But yeah, it's like, and I think also the biggest issue, and for some reason, I think if Jordan Peterson mentions frequently that 12% of the world's population is only smart enough to mop the floor. And then if you compare what he says with one of my favorite studies of all time, it's not even a physical medicine study. It's Dunning-Kruger in 1996. You familiar?
I'm not.
It's the best study I'll ever read.
Okay.
It shows that
Be glad.
highly intelligent and competent people undervalue their competence. So they may be performing close to 100% competency, but they believe they're maybe at 90 or 95 because they have some doubts. They know what they know and they know what they don't know. So they're much more accurate with their assessment, and they even undervalue their assessment, which is why, these are the people who check references. This is kind of the, cognitive process we're talking about.
Right.
However, the least competent people, the 12% that Jordan Peterson talks about, they believe that they are always at 100% competency, which is why the military will not take the bottom 12% of intelligence, because these are the people who will shoot their fellow soldiers in the back by accident because they'll forget to unload their weapon, or drive a Jeep through a crowd of people because they were texting. Like, these people are real stupid and they're dangerous, which is why they're only allowed to mop the floor. And I think that is really what we see the most of online, that kind of behavior. It's those people who post the most online. And which is why, when you like spend an hour reading Facebook comments, you're like, God, did I just get dumber? Like this is like the worst use of my time. And
So
what you said, you don't really like reading social media.
How did you aspire then to take science, right? I mean, and to bring it into the fitness realm where there are so many who aren't thinking?
Yeah. So that's a great question. It's really more of a business question. I decided to go around the unintelligent people and target busy professionals. So people who actually care about their time, they're probably smarter because somebody wants them around. The bottom 12%, they're not wanted. They're the ones that are paid hourly. So, they got plenty of time to be online, where the smarter people don't. And they're like, all right, I want to optimize. These are the kind of, it's more of a biohacker kind of mentality.
And I know you've been on some of the other podcasts that focus on biohacking, right? They want efficiency, they want results, they want to know how to get their body and mind to operate in unison.
Yeah, how do I perform at a higher level? Right. And they're not interested in things like going to the gym and seeing how hard they can throw the weights against the ground to make a big noise so everybody looks. Right? Because that's the gym, apparently. Since I developed my X3 prototype, I kind of forgot what the gym was like, and I walked into a few years later, and I was just like, oh yeah, now I remember.
Yeah, I don't miss
These people are just part of a subculture that is just so shameful. So yeah, and so I was really invigorated by seeing those people, because I realized there's the majority of the people who are busy professionals. The gym culture is not the majority of people, and it's a much bigger market, but it's a market with smarter people in it who are actually willing to learn something. And so when I give them a couple paragraphs of science, they read it and they go, this makes absolute sense. Like, anyone who's done a push-up knows that when your arms are almost extended, it's a very easy movement. When your nose is almost touching the ground, it's a very hard movement, right? So it's like, that's all I'm saying. I'm just saying the obvious. And the product embraces the obvious, and it's the first of its kind, and it'll probably be the only of its kind because I patented the hell out of it. in 49 different countries. So
Wow.
there's over, I think there's over 600 patents worldwide on X3. Like anybody that does anything sort of similar, we shut them down. We even shut companies down in China. There's one that people
for the listeners that haven't read the book yet or haven't gotten to see the X3 yet, although I'm sure they're going to start Googling it while they're listening to the podcast, that the idea being that part of your repetition is at the range where you're in complete fatigue.
Yeah, at the end.
At the end.
We call it diminishing range.
Diminishing range. So how do you get people to discover that or go into that range when they normally shy away from it? They're used to lifting, and then it gets a little tiring, they stop.
Well, the device encourages you to fatigue in that range because the weight goes down and doesn't hurt joints. Like when you have no pain and you do an exercise, it's amazing how great you feel and do. And so once that pain is just gone, they immediately start using that range of motion. Now, some of them don't bother to like watch the videos that show them, like they don't take the minute and 30 seconds to learn what to do. So that's a thing. But when they do that, they realize that the movements start out going almost full range. So you don't lock out. And there's a whole set of reasons for that, which have to do with down-regulating myostatin and creating a hypoxic moment where your
muscle. Explain those terms for some of our lesser scientific listeners.
You want to basically get your body to disregard some of your muscle mass and act like it's not there. And you can do that with hypoxia. And this is the blood flow restriction bands do the same thing, but your own physiology actually does it better. So there's no reason for blood flow restriction. What you do is you just don't lock out at the top and you don't rest at the bottom. Now, the problem with regular weight training is you can't do that with regular weight training because once you've reached sort of the stronger range of motion, or gotten even near a stronger range of motion, the muscle's really not that activated. It's only activated when the stress is higher. And because you're using a static weight, you have a performance curve. You have a curve of what a movement can deliver in the sense of real weight. But when you're lifting regular static weights, muscle's hardly activated at all when you're at extension. So no, there's some exceptions to that, like quad extensions. But of course, because that movement is so dissimilar to what the lower extremities actually do, you don't really grow from those. So yeah, you can get a lot of blood to move around, but it doesn't really do anything. It's like trying to get a tan with candles. I use that a lot. It's just like okay, you can have a stimulus, but it can be the wrong stimulus. Like if you don't get a tan from 2 candles, lighting 5 more is not going to help you. Right? So I see that a lot of fitness solutions are like that. It's like, oh, this exercise doesn't do anything, so let's do 10 sets instead of 2. Okay, because that'll be different.
So what was some of the science that led you to creating these fully resistant bands and of different strength that people would be able to experience the diminishing range and different concepts where they'd be able to get more of a workout in less time?
Yeah, well, interesting. Saving time had nothing to do with my objectives, not a thing. It just turns out that you really only need 1 set. In fact, like how many sets do you do in the sunlight to get a tan? How many sets do you have to do? How many times do you have to run in and out and let your skin rest between your next set to like get your skin to tan? You ask that question, people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Right. Why do you do multiple sets? Because the stimulus is garbage when you lift weights because it's weak. That's why you do more than 1 set. When you actually fatigue the muscle completely, you only have to do 1. You just can't do it with weights. It's just not possible. because of the variance in your output capacity. So when you have the proper variance, and you said, you asked the right question, which is developing bands that were way more powerful than the standard, Walmart exercise band. The standard Walmart exercise band is like anywhere from 5 to 20 pounds. Maybe there's a 40-pound one. That's the super heavy is like 40 pounds. Like working out with 40 pounds is like nothing. I mean, for unless you're like decrepit, right? So it's
you're not going to get the resistance you need.
Yeah. So you don't judge variable resistance as a concept based on the application of variable resistance with irrelevant force. You can't do that. I mean, some people have tried and said, I could pull on a piece of, surgical tubing for 10 hours. It's not going to do anything. And I'm like, did you watch the video? Because I'm in my chest press, I exceed 540 pounds. That's not a surgical tube.
How did you measure that?
I have a lot of really sophisticated measurement equipment, which came with my research and development of the OsteoStrong devices, experimenting with a lot of materials, durometers and different polymers, like how dense does a polymer have to be to give us the right, output, the right strength curve or closest to the right strength curve. It's just the body is so much more powerful than we think. I say my chest press at peak force when I'm almost at extension, because you don't go to full extension. When I'm almost at extension, I'm at 540 pounds, and people are like, well, that's your 1 rep maximum, right? And I'm like, well, 2 things. 1 rep maximums are idiotic. 2, it's just accident waiting to happen. And then, so, you never do them. And by the way, pro athletes never do them. There's like a myth out there that every day, everyone in the NFL is doing a 1 RM. Yeah, you're paid millions of dollars to catch a ball and run with it. And you're going to risk your joints by doing a 1 RM? No, you're not, ever.
It's like a combine thing, right? To show your worth.
But they don't do a 1 RM. It's how many times can you bench a nominal weight, 225, which to a guy in the NFL is like nothing, which is why they're up at 30, 40 repetitions. Might as well be a push-up contest. So it's nominal to them. I know it's really heavy to the people, hanging out at the gym with a sideways hat on. But it's like, okay, no 1 RMs. I think for a while they were doing 350 for some of the linemen, because it became so ridiculous that they were going so high rep with 225. But I think they got rid of that. I don't know. I work with 12 different NFL players.
I was going to say, how's the success rate been in getting this to professional athletes? And
incredible. You can't pick any fitness company that's working with 50 athletes who give their endorsement for free. Like that, when people they don't understand the science and they're like, well, you could have made all this stuff up, and they're not trolls, they're actually just skeptical. And maybe you give them a study and they're like, what is this? This is spaghetti on a page. I have no idea what this means. And I don't blame them, because you actually have to be trained to, you did it. When you absorb research, you can't just hand that to anybody. Like people, I meet physicians that cannot explain what statistical significance means. Does that worry you?
Well, we know in my field, right, in psychology, that when pharmaceutical the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, who's behind the authorship of those books? It's the pharmaceutical companies or people employed. So,
the complex of interest are one of the most important things to look at. Yeah.
Right. The way we create diagnosis and symptoms, and we're creating medications to treat.
Used? I used a Spearman row test in one of my papers, which will take a data set and another data set and measure the congruency, how similar these two data sets are. And most of the physicians that read it were like, well, I've never heard of this statistical test. And I'm like, it's super standard. And they just looked at me like, well, like, where's just a regular p-value? Now, I did have a regular p-value, but I was like, all of a sudden realized like they actually don't know what a p-value is. And that's terrifying, because that's the one metric they're supposed to really go, okay, like this compared with this sample size. Like I gave a lecture.
They may not all be researchers, right? I mean, they're
yeah, they're not, right? When they're in clinical practice, they're like, p-value, if it's less than 5, then that's good. If it's over 5, then it's not good. Okay, well, there's a bigger story there, because like if you have a p-value lower than 5 and your sample size was 20 versus a study where your sample size is 2,000 and you have the same p-value, which is the stronger study? Most of them would say the larger sample size. And I'm like, absolutely wrong. The smaller sample size, because you have to have a bigger difference to create significance in the distance between the data. Like if you pulled that off with 20 people, then your intervention is really powerful. If you did it with, let's go pharmaceutical numbers, 20,000 people, there could be almost no difference, just a tiny bit. And that would be statistically significant because of the size of the sample.
Right.
Right. Which is why.
And for our listeners, you use Spearman-Rowe when it's a different sample sizes.
Different samples, and you want to see instead of like an analysis of variance, which is a more standard way to get a p-value, because like how variable is this data? Is it just scattered all over the place, or is one data set kind of bunched together with their data samples in another? Versus with Spearman-Rowe, it's like, okay, we have an intervention, and then we have another intervention, and how are those similar, or are they completely dissimilar? And that was what I want to show was either similarity or dissimilarity between two different data sets. And it was like they didn't even know what it was.
Have you been able to compare the X3 versus like weightlifting or different types of nutritional practices?
Oh yeah.
Or both?
Now, what I want to do, like if I'm doing it, I want to be like, this is what people found, and these are this is what happened when they took a DEXA scan and then used X-ray for 6 months and used another DEXA scan. So you'd call that like a case report, which is a really low level of evidence, like almost worthless. But you get enough of those, and it's like, okay, well, maybe we look at the studies. Well, now the studies I want to point to are studies I had nothing to do with. Those are the most powerful ones because, especially if they're like, back in like the 90s when I was, even like 2000s, I was in high school. Like I wasn't like secretly plotting and paying millions of dollars when I was in high school so that I could launch, a breakthrough exercise device and make a stupid amount of money. Yeah, I wasn't doing it. So, and probably neither is any high school student. So it's really important to point out, like I've been accused of like, oh, you wrote this study and just had somebody else do it. And I'm like, I was like 17 when this study came out. Like, really? You sure about that? Anyway, so
that's part of the resistance.
Yeah, a part of so there are some of my studies that I reference when it comes to growth hormone secretion, because I wrote a study that like, no study of its kind had existed. So I had to. And that was a meta-analysis, by the way. And have you ever written a meta-analysis?
I have not.
Yeah, don't.
Time consuming.
Yeah, really, don't ever. It's the work. It's
how long did it take you?
It's like having a girlfriend that texts you every 5 minutes because she wants to know where you are and make sure you're not with another girl. You ever had one of those? I mean, it's cute.
Comment.
It's cute for like a week, and then you're like, "Wow, you're nuts! Can't do it." So I only attract women like that, by the way. Yeah, if they like me, definitely they're crazy.
We can talk about that in a different session.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's your wheelhouse, man. You know exactly. Yeah, definitely. I've got like a beacon above my head for crazy. So anyway, yeah, we could go.
So you were saying, so did you ever get to compare like X3 versus traditional weightlifting, or any of the different nutritional
Well, I try and
patterns?
isolate variables because X3's, even variable resistance, there's only 16 good studies on it. Actually, there's 16 studies, period. One of them is a piece of shit. The rest of them are pretty good. And they look at, what they compared between weightlifting and variable resistance. But then there's the other big factor, which I came to the conclusion of like I noticed some people were gaining muscle really fast, like myself. And then some other customers were like, this is, they send me videos of them doing the exercise. I can tell they're going to absolute fatigue. They're using the product right. And they're like, I've been using it for 6 months. I only gained like 2 pounds. And I'm like, well, tell me about your nutrition. And there was the problem. They just weren't getting enough protein or enough quality protein. And so I addressed that also by developing a protein product that was super efficient, made out of bacterial fermentation. That was a kind of another like watershed moment for the company, because as soon as people got their protein intake right, they started growing.
So is it like a shake, or is it like a kombucha?
It's probably more, well, it comes in a powder, but when you taste it, it's more like kombucha.
Wow.
Yeah, it's clear. Like it's not like whey where it's like heavy. Yeah, it looks like lemonade. There's a lot of comments I get about the taste. The taste isn't bad. It's unique, a little different.
Because you're keeping the sugar out of it.
Yeah. We sweeten it with stevia because like apparently everybody needs to have their supplements sweetened. But I did try this. It's called Fortigen. I did try it without any flavoring in it, and I almost couldn't keep it down. It was horrible. So,
right.
You kind of have to. Yeah, I mean, like you take a swallow of it, it just wants to come out of your body. But humans, or all mammals are supposed to eat rotting stuff. They do in nature, but we quit doing that for, I guess, sanitation reasons. But there's a lot of nutritional value when something starts to rot.
Right at that moment.
But there's value there. So now with Fortigen, we're getting that value. And 100 grams of protein a day are taken care of for me with Fortigen. And then so I only have to have another 150. So that's like 1.5 pounds of meat, or maybe 2 pounds of fish. Like I ate 2 pounds of jambalaya yesterday. It was really funny when I ordered it. Like they're like, there's no way you're gonna eat that. They're like, you want that to go, right? You have like a dinner party, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna eat it right here, right at the bar.
Is that
they don't even let you sit at the bar for like coronavirus, but they're like, you can stay at the bar. We want to watch this.
Is that somehow because you match it up per your body weight? How many grams?
Yeah, I take in 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's the strongest research, is all right around there. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less. But there's also values of protein. Like whey protein is only 18% usable by the body because of its amino acid ratios. So I would never consume whey protein. It's just totally inefficient. Also kind of doesn't do that well in your stomach and in your intestines. I mean, ask anybody's girlfriend or wife where the
I'm thinking I better go check my protein powder after our podcast.
Yeah, it doesn't do your digestion a lot of merit. So that was like the second thing where extra users really jumped ahead. And then when I wrote the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, I just needed to put everything in one place. It was like, now I get accused of having written a book about X3. Only 32 out of 268 pages are about X3. But the rest of it's about variable resistance, and obviously X3 is the premier variable resistance product. But I don't hide that, because if you read the back, like all my negative comments are about like this, this guy, he's such a jerk. He wrote a book about his product. If you look at the back, X3 is the second word on the back of the book. So it doesn't really seem like, and this is a quote from the Miami Heat strength coach, talking about how superior, the approach is.
Right.
It's like, if first of all, I got an endorsement, from the Miami Heat, and pro teams don't really endorse things. So it was like a big deal. And then the second thing is, like they're talking about, Bill Foran says, the X3 concept described in his book is a great addition to our program. Like, I'm not hiding that. That's kind of what the book is about. So, So like if you get the book, like you're going to learn a lot about the rationale, sort of the super extended version of everything we've been talking about, with all the detail and references and studies you can go look up.
So what's next for you, Dr. Jaquish? Are you trying to expand other professional leagues and athletes that you're reaching, and educating in conferences? I know you've, also been a nominee for the National Medal of Science. What can we expect from you as we continue through our quarantine reality and beyond?
I'm actually publishing another book in a couple of weeks, which was written before this one. It just had a couple other people involved, so it took a little bit longer to get it just right. Continue to document some of the science, and I'm doing some scientific work with a U.S. university right now. I can't really talk about it because it's going to be some original research, and it kind of spoils it for them if I throw it out there. So there's another big science fair project that I'm working on, and then there's some other things I'm looking to optimize, where we can create some simple interventions to really harness what we can get out of the human body. Like there's a lot of limiting things, like weightlifting, so limiting, and that's why it doesn't work for so many people. But there's a lot of things that aren't really optimized. Like why is it? Are you nearsighted or farsighted?
I have trouble seeing far, so it's nearsighted, right?
Yep. So
I really don't need it for this. For the podcast.
Our interventions are always focused on external correction. Mm-hmm. Why don't we strengthen the eye muscles? People have made this point before. There have been books written about this. There's no real good approach that people have embraced. Like I know people who go to law school, and because they read so much small text, they're exercising the antagonist, but not the other side, not the protagonist. So, then their vision, it becomes poor. Well, you can actually exercise the eye muscles. So there's just not a good way to do it. So am I going to go in that direction with a product or a therapy protocol or something? Maybe. I mean, it's something.
We'd love to strengthen their vision, right? With all the screens we're looking at and all the things that are getting closer, we need to.
Yeah, and right now, focus is done by the computer or the video camera that captures the video. Our eyes don't move at all. We don't do anything with our eye muscles when we look at a screen. That's a problem. That's they say sitting is the new cancer. And I think that's kind of a dumb thing to say, because cancer is kind of complicated, and don't compare it to being a lazy ass. But
there's things you can do to strengthen the muscles or get up and move those muscles. And if we get in the habit of not using them.
Yeah. So you ever been hiking in the woods, and you're looking at the trees that you're trying to avoid as you're hiking, but then you're also looking at the view, and then you have a splitting headache because your eyes are up close, far away, up close, far away, up close, far away. We're not supposed to get a headache from that. We're just not used to it. And that's what our eyes should be doing.
Right.
So that's just an example of like something that I'm kicking around. I mean, ultimately, there might not be a product. It might just be a way to treat your vision so that you can optimize.
That's terrific. Yeah, I know. I had a Dr. Levi on who works with gamers. I think he's a neuromuscular surgeon on a previous podcast. We should actually connect you guys. But he had like doing the Queen's Wave and different exercises for gamers on YouTube. He's got like 2-minute things you can do for each muscle grouping, because he's now the more and more professional gaming teams are coming along.
Yeah.
They're not exercising different body parts. So I would love it. I would love something like that.
I think almost everybody would. So
yeah, especially the more technology dependent we become, right?
Right. Well,
Dr. Jaquish, please tell us, in our closing minutes, how people can get a hold of you, how they can reach you, how they can learn more about the X3 and try one out themselves, because I'm sure they've been through it and they're going to be in a home-based situation perhaps for a little bit longer, or who knows how fitness is in flux, and your health should not stop just because of the conditions of the world that we're in. In fact, it's all the more important that we do things to build
this whole idea of like going to the gym and wearing a mask. Whoever wrote that legislation has obviously never exercised, because they don't understand breathing.
I couldn't breathe. I tried it once. I couldn't breathe.
You can't. Yeah, that's just so such a terrible idea. So yeah, I think fitness is going to happen at home now, because there's a lot of great options. And so I create a landing page for people to find me, because my last name is pain in the ass. So it's drj.com. So it's doctor spelled out, the letter J.com. And you can find my Instagram there, Facebook, other links to Superior Nutrition, which is Fortigen, and Superior Exercise, which is X3.
That's terrific. Yeah, I'd love to get a hold of some of the Fortigen. Is it like a daily shake that you combine like meal supplements, or?
Yeah, it's like a meal replacement. Very light on calories, though. Like I said, this is clear. It's 4 calories. So, it won't even break a fast.
Even better. And are you a personal fan of intermittent fasting? Is that part of it, or is that just?
Yeah, I put a little bit about that in the book. I don't know why it's a controversial subject, because the data we have thus far is very powerful. And anyone who tries it loses weight. I won't say easily, because it does take some discipline. But like, I'm doing a 72-hour fast a week. I'm actually in the midst of it right now. Am I hungry? Sure. But it's not like I'm, if I don't eat a pizza, I'm going to kill somebody, because I'm also ketogenic. Yeah. So I don't have that hunger rage that people who are carbohydrate.
72 hours per week?
72 hours a week.
Wow.
So my last meal, Sunday midday, and then I go Wednesday midday.
That's why you stocked up on jambalaya.
That was my meal. Yeah, midday Sunday.
That's terrific. Yeah, I'd love to read more about that, and our listeners certainly should. I know I did just a 24-hour fast last week, and I felt clearer and more alive than I had in a while.
Yeah.
I had to get over the attachment to food and the dependency on food, but other than that.
Also, when we hang out with people, like, how many events revolve around eating and drinking alcohol? Like, all of them. It sucks. Like, sometimes, like that's why I do the longer 72-hour fast at the beginning of the week, because there's less social and political events I go to, and the scientific conferences never spill over onto a Monday.
That's a good point. I think about that a lot, right?
Yeah, and so
you can be strategic about your fitness and your socialization.
Yeah. I haven't worried about going to conferences lately, but I still go to a lot of social stuff. And boy, I don't know if I should admit that on camera. Still do go to a lot of social events and host a lot of social events. But whatever.
But we're all doing that dance as we try and figure out what's safe and still try and stay connected and still create growth in the world. Is we can't stop living, but we're trying to do it in a healthy way.
Well, living in fear is not really living. So, most of my friends have actually gotten the virus and gotten over it and didn't even know. They just tested positive on the antibody test. And they're like, oh, what do you know? But my friends are fit people. So,
right.
Hemoglobin A1C, that's a thing. And if you pay attention to it and have a good score, chances are most viruses will kind of not do anything to you.
Well, you're saying there's a way to boost your immunity to it?
Yeah, it's more important than just the immune system. It's just general cellular function. This is why University of North Carolina, like 3 weeks ago, I was just on ABC 10 in Sacramento talking about this. People who are, this is their term. They said obese people, the vaccine, it won't work for them. And of course, everyone was upset because they're the ones that need it the most because of their hemoglobin A1C. Like it's their cellular metabolism is dysfunctional. Well, and people need to stop being offended by harsh realities, because then you're just going to ignore reality. That's a much bigger problem. So, why are people who are type 2 diabetic or have metabolic syndrome, why are they not going to have, or they have a lower likelihood of the vaccine working for them? Well, a dysfunctional cell is a dysfunctional cell. Like if you give a weakened form of the virus, which is what a vaccine really is, to somebody who has poor functioning cells, like it still isn't going to fight it very well. So, you just have to fix that problem. And I think we're finally in a situation, I see this as a little bit of a benefit, because it's really shining the light on the fact that we have to stop making it okay to just be shoveling garbage in our mouth and just like, oh, oh, it's okay. Like you get a cupcake when you go to the diabetes walk. What the hell? Like, I'm not making this up.
The dependency on sugar and the usage. Yeah. I mean, I have to be careful about it in my own family too. I know my dad grew up poor, and bringing home a sweet on the weekend was a way of showing affection, a lot of things. So it's something that I have to be careful with my own family of passing it down. And like you said, sporting events, social events can really become a part of so many things, and the lack of knowing how to change these patterns. But that doesn't mean that we need to perpetuate them.
No, and we need to encourage, before I go to like a social event that I know there's going to be like chips and salsa all over the place, like I won't look at it, because I'll eat 2 pounds or 3 pounds of meat before I show up. So when they're like, oh, you got to try the dip, and I'm like, I'm good, just ate. Like, not hungry. So, that's how I handle that. But it also like, oh, you need, have a drink. Like, so I'll put a lime in a glass of water, and I'm like, I got my drink.
Good for you.
Yeah. It's like, it's not complicated to get around, but you have to make some decisions. And I always tell people discipline is more important than motivation. Like, I think it's really not positive when people will look at the internet and like let's say an overweight person will look at a picture of like a pro athlete and be like, I'm going to get there someday. But the problem is there might be 10,000 decisions between the current day and the day you end up being in that kind of condition. So it's always easy to push off something where it's one of 10,000. So instead, you have to say, I've got to get through today without acting like I have the self-control of a child. You got to say that to yourself, because, you know, all you got to do is get through one day. Everyone, even the people with the worst nutritional decision making, the worst impulse control, they've made it through a day where they didn't need anything. You know, just circumstances, traveling, they were sick, whatever. Like, they didn't die. So make it through today, just today. And then tomorrow you make another set of decisions, because the only decision that counts is the one you're making right now. You can't even think about what you're doing. Like, so when I do the 72-hour fast, somebody offers me something, or, you know, like I'll go home and hang out with my parents, and my mom will have made something that smells incredible, like lasagna, which I would never touch. You know, it's like, oh, yeah, it smells great, Mom, but no, not. Yeah. So it's just that, of all you say to yourself is like, and the reason I bring up the 72-hour fast, I can skip a meal. That's no big deal. But if you start focusing on the 72 hours and how long it is, then you'll fall off the wagon.
Right.
Right. Don't think about that. Just think about making
you
it.
Start thinking you're depriving yourself, right?
Right. Yeah.
As opposed
like,
to what you're giving to your system.
Because in an hour, my parents will be done with dinner, the lasagna will be gone, and, you know, it'll be like, let's watch the news and see how it's trying to con America into believing that it's a terrible place when it's not. That's how my day goes.
Right on. Well, maybe we will do the next show on diet and nutrition. Dr.
Cool.
J, so much to share, so much knowledge. You motivated me. I'm going to grab my workout now, try and get some of this chest press in. Try and not let my quarantine be an excuse.
That's right. Yeah. Perfect.
So I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to keep pouring through this book here. It's great getting something that challenges pre-existing belief systems. I know for a lot of people that's really hard hearing it, but Dr. John has the science behind it. So we shouldn't be afraid of what we don't know on the path to evolution and growth. If that's what we're looking for, if our growth is if our idea is just to stay comfortable and in our same lane, then maybe don't read it.
Something like that.
I appreciate it.
You know, be mad at me. You can just leave a terrible review. The terrible reviews help me even more than the good ones. Because the more mad somebody is, people look at it and they're like, this must be a good book.
Exactly. That's how you know you're creating change, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Again, Dr. John Jaquish, and his landing page, drj.com. That's simple.
Beautiful.
Spelled out, doctorj.com. Real privilege. Thank you so much for honoring us with your time and energy today.
Awesome.
Well, a true gift in the field of weightlifting, nutrition, changing the model, and now the creator of the X3 system, as well as OsteoStrong for working with patients with osteoporosis or osteopenic. Dr. John Jaquish. Please check him out on social media, or like he said, DOCTORJ, and you can look him up and you'll get drj.com. I appreciate you tuning in, all of you, for listening to topics that challenge you, that push you to think and grow and change, and encourage yourself to do the same in our own personal development on the search for authenticity, health, and well-being. I'm Richard Listens, and I'm out. Take care, everybody.